If you're shooting concerts, do you need this lens or can you get away with this one? I'm going to tell you all about it on today's episode of
Ask David Bergman.
Hey everybody, here I am back as always answering your photography questions right here on Adorama TV. Today's question is from Vic P and he asks, what is your suggestion for a minimal kit for concert photography? Hey, thanks Vic. Shooting concerts, wow, this is something that of course is near and dear to my heart. I have been shooting concerts professionally for publications and on tour for a very, very long time. We have come a long way with the gear we have now from back in the day when we used to shoot 200 ASA slide film on manual focus cameras. There's so much more we can do today with modern digital cameras. However, when you talk about the gear that you need to do it, it is true that the more you spend, the easier it's going to get. I'm sorry to be the bearer of that news, but it is the case. I'm going to go through the gear that you do need to be able to shoot concerts. Now, when we talk about concerts, I'm not only talking about shooting live music events. The advice I'm going to give here today also is relevant to anything where there is motion, things moving around, and changing light, right? So maybe it's your kid in a play at school or something like that. Even sports to an extent, although sports you generally need even longer lenses, but a lot of this gear does cross over, not just for concerts. So the main thing you really need to worry about when looking at gear to shoot concerts is something where you need to be able to control the exposure, right? You have to be able to manually control the exposure. The reason is the lighting. The lights can really fool even the best digital cameras. Now, some cameras, of course, have really good face detection and things like that where they're going to set the exposure based on the face, but the light is just changing too much in these concerts. We might have red light on the lead singer, and that's going to throw things all out of whack. There's going to be lights changing in the background all the time, and if you just set on any kind of an auto mode, whether it's full program, or aperture priority or shutter priority or anything like that, the camera could potentially be fooled. And the idea is to get as many solid, great pictures as you can. So you need to be able to manually control the exposure. The other thing when you're looking at gear for shooting concerts is generally, I would say, zoom lenses are going to be better than prime lenses just because a lot of times you can't control where you're standing. Of course, if you can move in really close, primes are going to be okay. But for most cases, you're going to be stuck in one spot. Whether you're in the photo pit or you're in the audience or wherever you are, you need to be able to zoom in and out to be able to get different kinds of pictures. So now let's go through specific gear. And what I'm going to do is kind of go through the different levels of gear. I'm going to start at the bottom and work our way all the way up to the top. Now, of course, the question is, can you shoot concerts with a point and shoot? Well, the thing is, it really is possible to do. You know, point and shoot with a lens that doesn't come off, or even a phone to an extent, but the phone really isn't going to give you the kind of control that you need. So when we get into a point and shoot camera, most point and shoots will allow you to shoot manual exposure, so that's going to be great. There are a couple of caveats, though. You really are going to be limited with what you can do. You can absolutely make good pictures, but you're a bit limited. The first thing is you really have to be close, right? If you're in the audience and just there as a fan, if you're in the front row or the first maybe 10 rows, you're going to have the best shot. If you're way up in the upper deck, you're probably not going to be able to make anything besides a nice wide shot because you have to check what the optical zoom is of that camera. So that means what optically it can actually zoom in. The digital zoom is different. That's really just a crop, and so it's not going to give you the same kind of quality. So as long as it has a good enough optical zoom and you're up close, you're going to be all right. Again, as I said, you need to be able to set manual exposure. I also would turn off the flash. Sometimes the flash will manually go on, and you don't want that. You're probably going to be too far from the stage to affect the light on the stage anyway, and the flash, even if you were close enough, you don't want to do that because it's going to wash out the nice stage lighting that's already there. And then really the thing is you just have to wait for good light to happen. Again, you're limited with a point and shoot because you can't really manipulate your exposure in the same way. You don't have the same kind of control. So you just have to wait for when the light is in a good position. It's nice and bright on the artist. If you have that situation where you have all red light, you're not really going to be able to do too much with that. Here's an example. A few years back, I went to a concert as a fan. Two of my favorite artists, Sting and Peter Gabriel, they were touring together, and I was using the Canon PowerShot G5x. Now, that is an excellent point and shoot. It's not a cheap one. I think it's about $700 now. It was $800 when it first came out about 5 years ago. So it's not inexpensive. It has a a set lens in there. At the long end of the zoom, the equivalent in full frame, it's about 100 millimeter with a 2.8 aperture, which is actually very, very good. So that's why I brought that camera to the concert. Also, as a fan, that camera was allowed. Nobody cared that I had a little point and shoot, even though it was a really, really good one. So if you're gonna use a point and shoot and you want to bring it in as a fan, that is the way to do it. Go for a really good one that you know you can get a nice wide aperture, 2.8, and as much of an optical zoom as you can. So then if you want to step up from there, what you're looking at is an entry-level DSLR or a mirrorless camera with the kit lens. Now, I have right here, this is the Canon EOS M50. This is my little entry-level camera that I use for a few things, usually just for these videos. But the kit lens on this is a 15 to 45, 3.5 to 6.3. So that means at the long end, 45 millimeters, which is about a 70 millimeter equivalent on full frame, it's going to be a 6.3 aperture. That's a bit limiting. By the way, this setup is a little bit less expensive than that point and shoot. It's about $500 for this. So, the advantage of a camera like this over a point and shoot, in most cases, not in all, but in most cases, the higher ISOs actually look pretty good. So because I'm shooting at 6.3, I'm gonna have to bump up the ISO. I'm gonna be shooting at a much higher ISO than I would be normally because I'm shooting at 6.3. So this camera's gonna give me better quality at higher ISO. Also, a camera like this is modular. So as I start to upgrade, I can buy different lenses for different uses. It's gonna have more use than just for concerts, of course, but then I can get something like this. This is the adapter. What do they call this? The EF Eos M Adapter. So this allows me to put EF lenses, the really high-end Canon lenses on that camera body. So as I start to upgrade, that's actually the first thing I would do. What I would buy is something maybe like this 50 millimeter. This is a 50, is this a 1.4, I believe? I think this is a 1.4. But the 50 1.8 is actually really inexpensive. And 1.8, that's a nice wide aperture. So if you're shooting with a camera like that, with the adapter, you could put the 50 on. Now, again, you have to be close enough because you're not going to be able to zoom with this. But once you have that body and that adapter, then you can start to buy some really great lenses. I'll give an example. This is a 24 to 70 2.8. So this lens on that body, first of all, there's going to be a crop factor. So this is going to be even more than a 70 millimeter. The same thing with the 50, of course. So it's going to give me a little more optical reach, and it's a 2.8, which is really, really nice. It's going to give me that nice zoom, so I can shoot wide, I can shoot tight, and then also you could get something like this. This is the 70 to 200 2.8. These two lenses, these 2.8 lenses, are kind of the go-to kit for many, many concert photographers, really event photographers of any kind, because having that kind of a range, that 24 to 70 and 7200 2.8, all at 2.8 is really a great kit to have. So that's sort of the middle of the road, how I would start if I was going that direction and then wanted to slowly upgrade. The point and shoot doesn't really allow upgrades. Something like the M50 does allow me to grow as my needs grow. Now, just for fun, let's talk about the high end. Of course, when you really get serious, you're gonna get something like this. This is the 1DX Mark III, the Canon 1DX Mark III. This is the top of the line. It's a very expensive camera, about $6 grand. So you're only gonna get something like this, of course, if you're a working pro and you really, you make money with your images. This is the kind of thing you're going to use. Now, of course, with that body, you can use the 24-70 and the 7200. It's a great way to go. You want to have those lenses with a body like that. However, having said that, once you upgrade to a body like that, you can get away with even higher ISOs, right? So that camera, I can shoot 12,800 all day long, and it looks amazing. So because I can bump up that ISO so much, it opens up more lenses to me. So then I can use something like this, the 24 to 105. This is an f4 lens, but it gives me a longer range with my wide, my wide lens. Instead of just 24 to 70, it's 24 to 105. So I'm gonna have more opportunities to zoom in, and I can still get away with shooting f4, no problem, at 12,800. And then the other one I use is this. This is the 100 to 400. Now this is a variable aperture lens. It's a 4.5 to 5.6. So at the 400 millimeter range, it's a 5.6. So again, at 12,800, I'm gonna have no problem shooting at 5.6. Now, if you are a working pro, you're probably going to have two bodies because you want to have both lenses ready to go. You can switch back and forth really quickly, whether you're shooting wide or tight. With that setup I was just talking about, that's my go-to. I'm going to have 24 millimeters all the way to 400 millimeters on my shoulders and not worry about anything, right? Also, if you are a working pro, you're probably going to have a third body just for a backup. Cameras do go down, not as often as they used to, but they're really well made. But if something does go down, you want to make sure you have extra gear. You can't come back from a paying job saying, oh, sorry, my camera broke, right? So you've always got to be prepared. That's really the main gear. A couple other little things to think about if you're shooting something like concerts. Have extra memory cards. Make sure you have way more memory cards than you want. I use the ones from Prograde Digital. I love those cards. They're really well made. I use their readers, fastest ones I've ever used. So I'll put links to all this stuff down below, of course, but make sure you have more than you think you're going to need. Batteries, have extra batteries, make sure they're all charged up. Something I like to do is also I wear dark clothes when I'm shooting, especially if I'm going to be in the photo pit. The show is not about you, it's about them. And if you're wearing a Hawaiian shirt or something that's really distracting, a bright color, you're going to pull away the attention of the artist and possibly the fans as well. So you want to blend in with the, with all the dark stuff around there so nobody really sees you. And lastly, I always have a set of earplugs with me. You're right up there at front. Even if I'm further back, you still want to make sure you're wearing earplugs because you want to make sure you keep your hearing and don't get tinnitus. And the more concerts you shoot, you will definitely have issues. So look, at the end of the day, which gear you use really depends on how serious you are. If you're a professional, you need high-end gear so that you can capture all those important moments. You can't miss anything. No matter what happens, you've got to be able to zoom in. If you're on the other side of the stage and something happens over there, you need that long range. If you want something crazy happens right in front of you, you need to zoom out and make a wide shot. You want to make sure you can get it no matter what. If you're just starting out and you want to get your first body, I would get an entry-level DSLR like that M50 or a mirrorless and then start to upgrade your lenses as you go. Eventually, you can upgrade that body, but I think the lenses are going to be more important. And look, if it's just a hobby and you just want to take pictures to remember the concert that you attended, get something, a point and shoot like that G5X or, something along those lines. And then look, take a few pictures, put the camera away, and then just enjoy the show because that's really why you're there in the first place. All right. So listen, thanks so much for being here. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, go to AskDavidBergman.com. You can ask your own photo questions there. I just might answer it on a future show. I'm also doing one-on-one Zooms with you guys. So if you have a specific photo question, something I can help you with, whether it's a business question, something creative, something technical, I can help you directly one-on-one over Zoom. That's all at AskDavidBergman.com. So come back here. This show airs every Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern. Hope to see you next time. Take a breath now. I'll see you next time on Ask David Bergman.